We were just discussing cynicism and the unfortunate tendency for Americans today to be cynical about heroes and about ideals, including political ones. But you know, the greatest enemy of cynicism around, at least self-proclaimed, is Barack Obama, who in 2008 ran against the cynicism that had persuaded Americans for a generation that great change was not possible in our politics, and that we couldn't resume the liberal advance that had been cut off after the Great Society. But when he talks about cynicism, for him the opposite of cynicism is hope. I think for conservatives the opposite of cynicism is character or virtue or a substantive moral good, not just hope, which is basically, which is a kind of emotion, yeah. One could say. What do you make of that? Do you find Obama to be a helpful moral figure in the country and political figure in terms of his liberating us from cynicism, or is he introducing us to something worse?
He certainly has kindled hope in the hearts of many people. He has had a huge following and still has a very large following, though he's disappointed, arguably disillusioned a lot of his troops. A lot of this is personality. Some people say, well, there was a kind of hypnotic trance that he cast over people. But this is a free country.
I was immune, by the way.
Yeah, I know, me too. But and people can kind of will to be entranced in this way, and I think a lot of that was going on. And
he even spoke of being an empty vehicle that people projected their own hopes and values on.
We are who we've been waiting for. There was one of those comments. Right. He hasn't made me more cynical about politics. He's made me more active in politics. And he's made me more critical of what it is he's up to. I don't think he's a cynic. I think he genuinely believes what he's doing and is proposing. And I also think individually he's got some characteristics. Obviously, pretty good husband, very good husband, maybe very good father. And he also has, a kind of charm. What will the effect of the Obama presidency be? I think it could result in a big crash of confidence and maybe more cynicism, because this was the guy who many of his supporters thought was the guy. This is the perfect, this is central casting. This is what you want in a liberal Democrat president. But the question of whether he has succeeded or not is a different question. I don't score him down. I guess I'm coming to the end and answering your question. On the cynicism front, I don't think he's made people more cynical. I think he's probably one of the most important things he's done is generated more political activity. He certainly did in November 2010. The Tea Party and so on. We shall see if that happens in the summer and fall of 2012.
I sort of think he is certainly a figure who has campaigned against cynicism, but I think the ultimate effect of his administration is going to be a tremendous increase in cynicism about politics, because whenever you overpromise, and no one has not overpromised if Obama has not, you raise expectations for things that government simply can't do. Not simply managing health care, although that is an impossibility with ramifying consequences, but to stand in the vanguard of moral progress and represent the future in all of its wondrousness and all of its complete lack of definition.
But hasn't
I can't see how that. I mean, it's sort of like the '60s in a more respectable and more probably successful Camelot. But in the end, it leaves a bitter aftertaste, doesn't it?
Maybe you're right. If the liberal project is "we will take care of you," from cradle to grave. I'll never forget the debate with Bill Clinton and George Herbert Walker Bush and Ross Perot, in which Clinton said, we want this stuff when you're a baby and this stuff when you're dying, and we'll take care of everything in between. Just give us the money. And this is kind of what Obama is talking about as well. And that project is bound to fail. And I think that is the project. Will that lead to disappointment? Yes. Disillusionment? Yeah. Some cynicism? I suppose it will. But it may also remind us and energize us about what is possible within our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, and our history as a country. It has gotten a lot of people up and at 'em.
Yes. I think one of the things he did learn from Reagan was that you had to inspire people, and you had to connect to American history to do that effectively. And so he has, in his book, for example, The Audacity of Hope, the Democrat he mentions most often is Franklin Roosevelt. And he seems, despite, he of course has this admiration for Abraham Lincoln, which is well known, but he also has a serious desire to return his party to the glory days that it had under LBJ, and even more so under FDR.
I don't object to that, the notion of a national project, a national purpose, and that we're destined for greatness and we can do great things. Look, you can't criticize him for playing small on health care.
Not at all. No.
Arguably, he went after the wrong priorities, but this is a very huge project, which will, I think the language is accurate, transform American life.
Yes.
For the worse.
Yes, and of course he played the transformation card from the very beginning, that this was what his term was going to be about. But since you can of course transform America, but it's very hard to transform it for the better.
That's right.
And it seems to me that is the entry point for a lot of disillusionment.
Right.
Down
the difference between transforming America, which I think you can't do for the better, because I think it's pretty good the way it is, and it is still the last best hope of Earth. And having a national project or a set of national projects or purposes consistent with America's definition of itself, American principles and American institutions. He seeks, I think, in some ways to change those, to alter the very terms and principles, terms of debate and the principles under which we operate.
Yes. And do you think he will be a model for future liberal democratic politicians? Is he going to be not just successful enough, but deserving of success enough to be that kind of a model?
Not for a while. Not for a while. I don't think so. I think my guess is the next kind of democratic model you will see, judging from whom I'm seeing emerging and who's getting attention, is going to be a fix-it guy, a guy who can really fix it, focuses on details, knows policy, enough inspiration, let's get it done.
Of course, he aspires to be that as well in the second term. I mean, he can't run on hope.
Yeah, but he doesn't know, because he doesn't know policy.
Right.
He's an intelligent guy, but he doesn't really know the implications of his actions. I think he's got a kind of he's got an ideology. I think there's a kind of straitjacket there. Hannah Arendt wrote once, there's nothing more confining than an ideology. And I think he sees the world through those terms. And it's not working. And I think by the time we get to the election, I hope the majority of the American people see plainly that it's not working. Yeah. Sure, mostly on pragmatic grounds, on practical grounds, on bottom line grounds, not on who's more inspired.
Right. Do you find him, as I do, soft, so to speak, on American exceptionalism?
Yes.
And this is, it struck me when he gave his famous speech about Jeremiah Wright, separating himself from Jeremiah Wright, that what he didn't do was quote the words, all men are created equal, in a speech about race in America, slavery in America, where Martin Luther King or Abraham Lincoln or any other sort of iconic American figure would immediately have reached into the Declaration of Independence and grabbed those words as a sacred text. He passed over them in silence in that address, which led me to believe he actually agreed more with Jeremiah Wright's indictment of America than he disagreed with it.
There's an interesting thing he does, which is, so you said earlier, he goes back, he reverts to the earlier figures, the earlier great figures, and wants to see himself in that pantheon. But he doesn't do the work that many of them did. He doesn't do that deep reading and thinking that Lincoln did. Or that others did.
It may be, I mean, from his point of view, I think it would be maybe fairer to him to say that he does feel he's representing the country, but he's not representing the real country or the country of the American past. He's representing the country of the future. He's representing the transformed America.
Okay, I was going to use the same word, the country that it ought to be.
That's right.
I represent the America as it ought to be. But for many of us, we think it's really pretty impressive the way it is. Yeah, we can fix things, we can improve things. Things can always be made better.
Right.
But the task is not transformative. The task is to make ourselves live up to our basic premises.
Yes, I mean, America as it is has always had a component of what it ought to be, I mean, from the Declaration of Independence on, we've been aspiring to perfection, as it were, and are acutely conscious of our imperfections.
He's got to wonder sometimes. You would think someone would say to him, why do you think all these people want to come here?